Hello everyone, and apologies for not uploading the last few weeks. Going on vacation and starting work will do that to you, but now I will at least try to establish the goal of weekly uploads on this channel every Sunday. Hold me to it. Now, if you're a history nerd and if you have some testosterone in you, in other words, you're a man, then perhaps you'd love the 2006 historical action movie 300. Starring Gerard Butler as King Leonidas, his over-the-top macho performance is very entertaining to say the least. I think perhaps no clip in the movie exemplifies this entertainment quite like this one.
What is your profession?
I'm a potter, sir.
And you, Acadian, what is your profession?
Sculptor, sir.
And you?
Blacksmith.
Spartans! What is your profession? You see, old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did.
Yeah, I'd say the awoo scene definitely makes you want to run through a brick wall for good old King Leonidas. The movie portrays his last stand defense quite heroically, as he is going up against the Persian god king Xerxes in a battle of 300 men versus 300,000 men, literally 3 orders of magnitude higher for the Persian army. But how much is 300 based on real-life events, and how much of it is, well, historical fiction? We're going to be analyzing that in today's video. Before we dive into the movie, it's important to have some context on how the actual battle played out. The Battle of Thermopylae happened in the year 480 BC between the Spartan army led by King Leonidas and the Persian army led by King Xerxes. The context behind this is the previous Persian king Darius demanding a tribute of earth and water from Greece, wanting a submission to Persian rule. He would send diplomats out to get this tribute, and most of the Greek city-states obliged, but not Athens. The proponents of democracy were nice enough to give these diplomats a trial, and then promptly execute them by throwing them in a pit. And Sparta, well, they were even worse. No trial, just the pit. And if you're wondering where the "This is Sparta" scene comes from, this is where it comes from.
Madness. This is Sparta!
Now, historically, I bet the kick into the pits was not nearly as epic as the movie made it out to be. But in any case, Persia wasn't too happy with the Spartan tough guys not submitting to their rule and killing their emissaries. So the Battle of Marathon happened, where Greece beat back their Persian invaders. But Persia again was mad, and they built up their army, wanting its revenge against Greece. Well, they were going to get it in 480 BC. At the start of the Persian invasion of Thermopylae, Greece was estimated to have 7,000 soldiers. Persia, on the other hand, had anywhere from 120,000 to 300,000 soldiers. That's quite a disadvantage. And while the ancient wisdom of Sun Tzu says that numbers don't necessarily confer an advantage in battle, at this point it does. Speaking of ancients, some ancient scholars actually estimated the Persian army to have millions of soldiers, not just hundreds of thousands. That would only add to the legendary legacy of Sparta's last stand defense. What happened was this: Ephialtes, a Greek citizen, betrayed his homeland in hope of some reward from the Persian army. Leonidas knew his forces were being outflanked at this point and knew a beating was coming, and so he dismissed the bulk of his already far smaller army, leaving only 300 Spartans and 700 Thespians to fend off the Persian invaders. Leonidas' choice not to retreat and surrender, and fight until the very end, has been the subject of much discussion. The movie 300 definitely tells us that his decision was influenced by the idea of Spartan toughness, and it was part of their honor code simply not to surrender. That gives me another excuse to show one of my favorite clips.
No retreat, no surrender. That is Spartan law. And by Spartan law, we will stand and fight and die.
The result of this bloodbath battle was Greece losing some of its land, but certainly not its morale. In fact, in the year 2020, Greece made a commemorative coin marking 2,500 years since the Battle of Thermopylae, showing that the heroic last stand lives on in the country's lore. Now that you've seen some of the clips of the movie, how accurate did it actually display what happened? Well, one of the biggest historical inaccuracies, at least according to the critics, is how the Persians were portrayed. Some called it Iranophobic, as the Greeks were clearly portrayed as the good guys defending themselves against a scary enemy army. After all, look at the way old Xerxes is portrayed. The dude's face looks more messed up than Post Malone with all that crap on there. And surely the actual Xerxes did not look like this. I will say the way they portrayed the Persians seems like a valid criticism to me. When the quote-unquote enemy is portrayed in an over-the-top way, such as how the British are portrayed in The Patriot, it is truly unbalanced and unfair. That being said, a critique I have more disagreement with is the way the Spartans are portrayed. Critics got all upset with how buff Leonidas and his gang looked. The famous critic Roger Ebert only gave the movie 2 out of 4 stars partly because of this, saying, 300 has one-dimensional characters who talk like professional wrestlers plugging their next feud. Kenneth Turin of the LA Times wrote, unless you love violence as much as a Spartan, Quentin Tarantino, or a video game playing teenage boy, you will not be endlessly fascinated. Not Tarantino catching shade, I love that guy. And perhaps that's why I disagree with all this. Spartans probably should be portrayed as over-the-top violent. They're the ones who would literally let their kids die if they were not tough enough. It was part of their culture to be tough. Maybe they weren't as muscly as Gerard Butler and the actors made them out to be, but you know what? That bit of fantasy is alright by me. As Leonidas says in Epic Rap Battles of History,
Your arm is hard, but my abs are harder!
Now, the critics disliked how some of the characters were portrayed while still appreciating how excellent the visuals of the movie was. After all, the movie itself was based on a graphic novel portrayal of Thermopylae. It's important to remember that when discussing its historical accuracy, or inaccuracies, if you will. So how do historians feel about the movie 300? Well, they don't think it's that accurate. For starters, there's the way the Spartans are dressed in battle. In reality, they weren't half naked, so the Eberts of the world who were upset about how they looked like pro wrestlers, maybe they had a bit of a point, but historians had a whole other problem. Actual Spartans fought with chest plates and much more clothing on them than these fictional Spartans did. But writer Frank Miller defended this decision, saying, I wanted them to look good. Another clear inaccuracy is how the traitor Ephialtes is portrayed. In reality, he was a regular local Greek with a normal body. In the movie, he was portrayed as this ugly, troll-like creature with a horribly hunched back. Perhaps this is to vilify his betrayal by making him out to be some sort of monster. This is another problem historians had with the movie. We already know how non-historian critics had an issue with how Persians were displayed in an over-the-top manner. But the non-Spartan Greeks were also portrayed as weak, with none being more so than Ephialtes. This leads to the overall idea that Spartans were over-idealized in this movie, that their society was a perfect bastion of manliness. In reality, they were a quite oppressive society, owning slaves on a level unlike any other in ancient Greece. So while the Spartans look good and their heroic side is clearly portrayed, anything that may portray them negatively is clearly glossed over. Now, ancient writers were certainly used as a source, but historians even criticize this. Aeschylus is used when the Spartans are described as battling a massive human herd of Persians, and Herodotus was another one of those ancient Greek historians who had a, shall we say, fanciful view of just how many Persian soldiers there were. Remember how we discussed the ancient Greeks' overestimation? Well, while modern historians say there were hundreds of thousands of Persians, Herodotus said there were 5,283,220 of them. Yep, that's quite a difference. And as you might guess, the movie goes more for the narrative of this massive human herd as opposed to a very big human herd. That was probably more the truth. So yes, 300 used historians, but they used the tales of ancient historians who were probably just making stuff up. Well, what do I think of all this? To me, historical inaccuracies can be okay if the movie is entertaining to watch, and that's how I feel about 300. The Persians definitely could have been portrayed in a more respectful way, I don't deny that, but the glossing over of Sparta's faults and the macho portrayal of their soldiers, that may just be part of the storytelling that's going on here. Again, we have to remember that this movie is based on a graphic novel, not actual history. If the Spartans were portrayed as they actually were, that is, not WWE wrestlers, perhaps the movie would have been more historically accurate, but maybe not as enjoyable a watch, in my opinion. And there are some things I think the movie gets right, namely the portrayal of Spartan women as strong like their men. Spartan Queen Gorgo is one of my favorite characters in the movie. Now, did her killing the council member actually happen? No, the whole "this will not be over quickly, you will not enjoy this," that was all made up to enhance the storyline. I really enjoyed the scene, but yeah, it's baloney. That being said, Gorgo did have influence over Leonidas in real life and had political clout. Some of the quotes Greek historian Plutarch cited from Gorgo were used in the movie. For example, when an Attican woman asked her, "Why are you Spartan women the only ones who can rule men?" she said, "Because we're the only ones who give birth to men." Damn. So overall, if you, as a history buff, do not like the movie 300, I'm not going to fault you for your opinion. It gets stuff wrong, it even admits to getting stuff wrong just in order to glamorize. But as a man in his early 20s, who grew up playing video games and likes Quentin Tarantino, I must tell you movie critics and historians this. 300 may be inaccurate, but it sure is an enjoyable movie to watch. So what is your opinion on the movie 300? What were its accuracies and inaccuracies? Let me know in the comments, and I shall see you next week. Bye bye.